Hey everyone, my name is Tammy Davis, and I really appreciate you watching. And I always look forward to questions because it always gives me something to talk about. And in this case, I've actually already done one kind of along these lines, and I just finished writing a post on lemon essential oil. And so I'm not necessarily going to go into that today, but that actually is what prompted me to even do this particular video, which is around the area of essential oils and as it affects brain health, is how I want to say that. And so I was actually in a conversation with someone earlier today regarding toxicity and pollution and health. And it's interesting to me that even though I realize that in our world, we really have done a good job of classifying and kind of categorizing various health conditions, well, for that matter, all health conditions. When you take a broader perspective, I'm kind of cold, so I'm staying wrapped up. It's really, really chilly here today. When we take a broader perspective, you can begin to see how it's all related. And what I also find equally fascinating is just yesterday I was reading something somebody had shared on Twitter. But it was an article that was written with regards to the 30-year anniversary of Prozac, or Prozac's been on the market for 30 years, and the assumption was that we're really not living with chemical imbalances. And so when I was reading the article, it goes into talking about how Hippocrates believed that melancholia was a result of imbalance with the fluid within the system. And the way the article was written, which was very, very well done, the highlights, the points that it illustrated were really very good, in the sense that it really demonstrated our fluctuation in thought process, how we've gone from structural to chemical. And so we kind of go back and forth, and as to what is actually leading to depression or melancholia, or in this case, what, as far as I'm concerned, is anxiety. Is it a chemical imbalance, or is it actually something structural? Or, there's all these questions. And like I said, when you just look at health in general, you can begin to see parallels. In this particular article that I just completed writing on lemon essential oil, I attempt to do just that, which is express how why lemon is not advisable for any long-term use, very much like lavender, because it influences the brain chemistry. I mean, we can get into the specifics of it, where that it influences the activity of the serotonin receptors, and it increases the rate of breakdown or metabolism of dopamine. And again, like I said, I wrote about it, so I'm not going to get into it here. But one of the byproducts, it's not even a byproduct, it's one use of dopamine when it goes through an auto-oxidation process. Auto-oxidation is a necessary process that keeps the body proactive. We like to look at the body as dysfunctional and diseased. And truthfully, when you're worn out and tired, you feel like crap, and there's a lot of discomfort, right? But the truth is to get to that point, it was never diseased or dysfunctional. It wasn't even out of balance. And this is what I talk about. So I can almost align with the fact that we're not dealing with chemical imbalances. Is it just a change in your thought process? I'd like to say that is yes. And at the same time, I don't necessarily know that that's 100% the case. It's a lot easier said than done, having been somebody that's lived along those lines. It's really difficult to shift your mindset. And when you live in areas where the air pollution is questionable, or I should say the air quality is questionable, and then you have cars, okay, and you have products that you put on your skin, and products that you use in your mouth, and when we're looking at everything that we're consuming, it's fair to say that the body is reacting. And we all know that a reaction is an inflamed response, right? When we react to something, whether it's a reaction of excitement or a reaction of anger, it's typically kind of accelerated, or it's exacerbated. I mean, I've lost my word there. But anyway, but you get what it's emphasized, is another way I can say it. So there's a lot of enthusiasm, regardless if it's a good enthusiasm or a negative enthusiasm. There's a lot of enthusiasm. So that's what a reaction is. If we respond to something, we come at it from a more thoughtful way. When I think about human beings, I can think of nature. Nature, truthfully, in my opinion, responds as opposed to reacts. But at the same time, there is a reaction. And so there's an inflamed response. And so so what I'm getting at here is then when we are exposed to so much, there is an inflamed reaction in the system. And what that means is oxidation. We're breathing heavily, there's a lot of oxygen coming in, and those chemicals are being metabolized rapidly in order to produce an oxidative stress chemical or a reactive oxygen species, or anything that's considered an inflammatory marker typically has a reason for being in the body. I've done videos on this as well. I've done a lot of research on these very chemicals, because I have a hard time believing that we produce things that we don't need. Maybe we don't need them forever, or we don't need them on an ongoing basis, but there's reason for it in the moment that it's produced. And so therefore, I spend a great deal of time digging into all of these things. And the reason I'm even saying that here is one of those particular substances is referred to as neuromelanin. And I may not be pronouncing it properly, that's how it's spelled. Somebody said to me the other day, I think it's called neuromelanin. I'm like, well, neuromelanin, tomato, it's all the same. The point is it is a substance found in the substantia nigra, which is a section of the brain that is linked to Parkinson's disease. It is it's where I should say a large portion of our dopamine neurons are, and like I said, it is the part of the brain that is equal to motivation, motor control, rewards. So obviously there's dopamine involved there. But when dopamine is one of the purposes of dopamine, and I've actually heard other clinicians say that dopamine helps eliminate heavy metals from the body. Let's just go on record and say that the body does not have any defined metal elimination system. We were not programmed to be in the environment that we are currently in, and we have yet to adapt to it fully. That said, we do produce neuromelanin, which comes from the breakdown of dopamine. So the metabolism of dopamine goes into the process of producing this other chemical. It is through, like I mentioned earlier, through autooxidation, and the reason for the substance is it gathers the metals that are circulating and have crossed the blood-brain barrier, and it basically harvests them. It's a collection system, and then we end up storing it in the brain, and now we have high levels of restless leg. I can't tell you the number of children that I work with that have restless leg. I've also been diagnosed or been told that they're living with ADHD. Of course, then there's autism. We now have early onset schizophrenia. I mean, it used to be that schizophrenia was basically diagnosed late teens, early 20s. Sometimes it was later in life, but now we have young children being diagnosed with early onset schizophrenia. I have to say I've noticed that I'm shivering, so if it sounds like I'm stuttering, that's what it is. The air coming off this window that I'm sitting next to is incredibly cold, and I chose this window because of the light, so there you have it. Anyway, even mentioned there, stuttering is when it's chronic stuttering, it actually comes from the very same area, which is it's linked to dopamine. And as is bedwetting, enuresis. So all of these conditions, if you will, all stem from a very similar chemical alteration. I'm sorry, I didn't want to go for imbalance, because as I see it, nature's in a constant state of homeostasis, or seeking homeostasis. We like to think that balance is achievable, but just as we come into balance, then there's going to be something else. And so it's a constant state of moving into homeostasis, and that is the nature of nature. So I don't believe in chemical imbalances, like I said earlier. I've talked about it in the past, but as I dig through this more and more, I've come to see that it's really just a matter of chemical adjustments that are being made. And again, the neurochemistry is required for other processes in the system, and so the body has to break it down in order to use it for other reasons. And in this case, it's going more towards oxidative stress, which is the reason why we are seeing so many degenerative diseases, neurodegeneration, and so forth. So that's the reason for all the talk of lemon and lavender and such, because there are very specific essential oils that are known for their influence on neurochemistry and specific hormones. So it's not just neurotransmitters. Again, it's hormones, and keep in mind, some of our neurotransmitters are considered hormones once they start getting into other functions in the body. So essentially, it's all chemical messengers, and essential oils have the ability to influence that. So it's very important to know what you're using and to really change it up. If I've ever said it before, I'm going to say it again. It's absolutely necessary to alter your oils and not stick with the same thing. And that's a concern given the amount of fragrance that we use. And I realize there's all kinds of things that we can talk about that we need to be mindful of. But what I do know is that essential oils are becoming increasingly popular, and nicely scented products. I've seen household products with the word aromatherapy attached to it, whether it was just through advertising or even on the labels themselves. But there's a lot of emphasis on the use of essential oils on aromatherapy on a daily basis. And while I have great deal of appreciation for that, I'm here to say we need to be careful with that, because these household products already contain such things as xenoestrogens and other chemicals that are affecting us. And so to add insult to injury by including the oils in these ever popular fragrances is actually not to our advantage. And at the same time, if you're using essential oils separately, whether it be in a diffuser or in a blend that you buy, we need to be understanding that, again, these oils have very specific influences on the neurochemistry. And if you're taking medications, and let me just remind us that over 50% of the US population alone is taking some form of psychotropic. That's a huge amount of people. So to include essential oils with that, and knowing a psychotropic is already affecting your neurochemistry, you want to know that you're helping to bring stabilization to the body. You're actually helping to stabilize the system and not doing more of the same thing. And by that, I mean, like, if you're taking an antidepressant and you're including lemon oil in that, if you're taking an SSRI and you're also using lemon oil, you're really throwing the system out of balance. Meaning you're creating more of one chemical, which is going to cause other adjustments to happen. There is a ripple effect. And so if you're using an SSRI, you're going to want to use something that doesn't have any influence on the serotonin, or for that matter, any of the neurochemistry. You want to actually support the digestive system. You actually want to help maybe stabilize the immune system, because again, those chemicals are also used by they also interact with the immune system. So kind of coming at it from supporting the digestive system. and really bringing a sense of stability to the body. So that would go back into more of your grounding oils, things like myrrh and vetiver and benzoin. And again, benzoin is only advisable in some cases. You're going to want to not use it in conjunction with other medications. So a mindful application is absolutely necessary. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about also is a statement for, I guess where I was going with all of that too was also just to say that I can completely understand when you take a broader picture, a broader look at what we're exposed to environmentally and the level of stress that we're experiencing on a daily basis, whether it be mental, emotional, and or environmental, is the fact that there's no mistaking why we have such things as Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or ADHD or and even including addiction. Having learned everything that I did from doing the recent video on lemon and especially the blog post that I did on lemon essential oil, and really coming to understand dopamine at the level that I did, and I'm absolutely fascinated by it because I will spend the rest of today and who knows how long pondering just really what's going on in the brain. I can completely understand everyone's fascination with really getting to understand what's going on, why it's happening, and the various levels of activity within the brain. But the honest to God truth is, whether you're involved with illicit drugs and alcohol, or you're just reaching for, these heavily caffeinated drinks and really indulging in the sugars. I got a phone call from a young man, his mother actually. He was just recently released from a treatment facility and was being stabilized with medications, was doing very well. We did put him on some oils that supported the medications, and he was doing quite well. And then all of a sudden, over the holidays, he started, in his parents' mind, having a setback. Now, he was just treated for mental and emotional instability. There was no addiction as we would recognize going into treatment for. Meaning there wasn't any drugs or alcohol. But since then, he's become very hooked on eating a lot of sugar and drinking heavily caffeinated drinks. Now, he's also coming off some really strong medication. And so what I've had to explain to them is that it's no mistaking, given the area that he lives in, given what he's exposed to, and also understanding, keep in mind that the neuromelanin that I mentioned actually rapidly develops in the human brain very early in life. So we're talking infancy to adolescence. So that's when the greatest development of neuromelanin happens. Now, it does continue on throughout the rest of our lives, but not as significantly like it does in the beginning. And that just tells me, now that's just me, but when I think of stuff like that, and I realize that the brain is born with the body into a world that all of a sudden is exposed to all of these heavy metals. And I realize that these heavy metals, and in this case I'm talking iron, manganese, sulfur, and selenium. Those are the ones that are typically found in neuromelanin. These are found, they're in our environment already. They're around us in the natural world, but we're using these for other purposes. And so therefore you have a human body that's born into a world and then boom, exposed to them for any number of reasons, and it's gathering in the brain. And like I said, the body doesn't have a well-defined system for eliminating heavy metals, therefore it's stored in the brain. But if this is happening on a regular basis, okay, let me back up a minute. If this is happening early on in life, and the dopamine that's required for motivation and reward, and that is a good thing. This is how we learn and through life, this is, there's going to be rewards. So there's a reason for this. There's a positive for this process. So at any rate, so there is a reason for motivation and reward. In the meantime, that chemical that's required for that is being devoted essentially to the development of neuromelanin, to the scavenging of these heavy metals. All right, so which means we're depleted in our dopamine. So what's going to happen with these children? They're going to be agitated. They're going to be hypersensitive. They're going to show stuttering. There's going to be bedwetting. There's going to be a whole host of things that are going on at a very early age. That's a very early sign that something's happening in the brain. Now, can we stop this from happening? I'd like to say so, but guess what? Oils will actually do that. I understand there's a lot of people out there that are doing chelating agents, and I can honestly tell you that chelating agents actually help remove metals from the blood. They're not necessarily a guarantee for the brain. If the brain is what we're looking to protect, then your better option is an essential oil. Straight up, I'm not going to lie to you. But at the same time, we can also understand why we're seeing children get involved with eating a lot of sugar. It's not that they're weak. It's not bad parenting. It is actually a form of self-medication. Secondly, there's those who go for the chips and the heavily processed foods because of, there's a lot of the omega-6s in there. We hear omega-6s are bad for us. No, they're not. They're good for us in proportion to the amount of omega-3s. There's actually a specific ratio that's beneficial. They're needed for hormonal production. That said, they also activate the endocannabinoid system. Ooh, there we go. More self-medication. So is this a bad thing? No, it is a sign that the body is struggling and therefore would benefit from the inclusion of essential oils. Again, those that help with digestion, those that help with stabilizing the immune system, those that help us feel grounded, those ones that help us feel grounded, like frankincense and myrrh and vetiver, those particular oils, and Roman chamomile. Roman chamomile would be exceptional in this case because it actually helps produce glutathione, which guess what? Helps to scavenge and protect us from the heavy metals. That and magnesium. So these are all ways to address these symptoms as healthfully as possible. Now, again, this isn't in lieu of any medical assistance, okay? This can be in addition to, or this can be an early on. This can be more of a preventive, because let's face it, we all live on the same planet. So all of that said, we can also now begin to see why addiction develops. Okay, we're self-medicating. Maybe not all of you approve of somebody's choice of drug. Maybe a bag of chips to you is better than, cocaine. Okay, that's understandable because, well, truthfully, they both can lead to death. So let's be realistic and let's be kind, and let's just say that not everybody chooses the same drug. But the fact is that we're all self-medicating, and we can, given what I've come to understand just alone about dopamine in the last week, 2 weeks has been extraordinary, and I'm excited to share it here with you. And all I want to say is offer up, if you are in fact struggling, like this young man, reaching out for sugars and caffeine, and I'm having to give them some nutritional advice because he's already got the oils in place in order to offset this and improve his level of ease and motivation and feeling better. So there is no mistaking why any of this happens. Like I said, our children are reaching for foods that we don't necessarily approve of, but that's not their fault. It's not their fault. It's just the world that we live in. And are we going to clean it up anytime soon? Unfortunately not. But we can actually take care of our internal environment in order to protect ourselves from the external environment, with the hope that we're going to make a change outside of ourselves. Because the fact is that our kids are coming in stressed, and then it gets increasingly worse. Another reason this is such a big deal for me is because anxiety and autism and ADHD and restless legs and addiction and Parkinson's all run in my family. I don't know anyone in my family that's not immune to something along these lines. So it hits home with me. I hope this makes sense. If it doesn't, by all means, let me know, and feel free to ask me additional questions. I just really want to hit home that there is great possibility for us here. It's just we have to. What my desire is to shed light and actually see this as not a dysfunction. That this is a sign that our systems are needing help. It's doing its best to keep us protected, but if we don't listen, we will get sick. And with that, I look forward to hearing from you. I appreciate you watching, and I hope you're having a really beautiful day and maybe a little bit warmer than I feel right now. But anyway, thank you very much. I'll talk with you later. Bye.